Avengers Doomsday releases in December of 2026, and that gave me the brilliant idea to rewatch the entire MCU. Yes, I mean everything. The movies, shows, specials, you name it. I'm going to be reviewing every single project all on this channel in a series I'm calling The Road to Doomsday. Now, obviously, just to clarify, I'm not the first person to do something like this. There have been plenty of content creators in the past, and I'm sure there's plenty of content creators who are doing the exact same thing as me. Obviously, there were content creators that did this for when Infinity War or Endgame was coming out. And again, like I said, I'm not the first person to do this, but obviously there is a lot more content today in 2025 than there was in 2019, so this is going to be a very lengthy series. However, if you're along for the ride though, obviously please do consider Hulk smashing that subscribe button so you never miss one of these videos. I'm going to try my best to upload as many as possible. I obviously can't guarantee it'll be every day, but I'll try my best to keep you guys up to date and just keep you guys on par with everything that I'm going to be covering. Another quick thing to mention is I will be reviewing these projects in release date order because that is the only correct way to watch the MCU. And another small thing is I will be tackling spoilers throughout this series. I'm trying to keep it as spoiler free as possible for anybody who's trying to get into the MCU and, you know, all that good stuff. But I can't promise it'll be spoiler free throughout the entire franchise. So again, just a heads up, there will be spoilers involved, especially for this first review. That being said, speaking of the review, let's quit the yap session and get into it. But we got to go all the way back to 2008. So let's talk about Iron Man. I think that one of the best things that the MCU could have done to kickstart their massive cinematic universe was to make their first installment a simple, good old-fashioned comic book story, which obviously that just sounds like straight up common sense, but let's not forget that this movie was essentially made on a small budget. Marvel was an independent film studio and they basically had no script, meaning director Jon Favreau usually encouraged most of the actors to improvise a lot of their lines so that the scenes had more realism to them. On top of that, you have the now iconic casting of Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. He's funny, sarcastic, egotistical, arrogant, but he's also a super genius, and the movie never fails to show you all of his personalities. Within the first 15 to 20 minutes of the movie, they establish, and Robert Downey Jr. just embodies perfectly exactly who Tony is, a genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. In one of the first scenes we see him in, within the hours leading up to his capture, the man is literally gambling. So use this as your sign to gamble, and Tony Stark we trust. But going back to what I said about this being a simple, good old-fashioned superhero story, you put our protagonist in a predicament or an obstacle they need to overcome, and they overcome it and they come out forever changed. Through being captured and being stuck in his cave, Tony learns about self-reflection, redemption, self-growth, responsibility. And we're also introduced to the character of Jensen, who was also captured in a cave with Tony. And Jensen brings this sort of level of humanity to Tony, in a sense that Tony starts to appreciate and value the relationship with other people moving forward after meeting Jensen and after Jensen helps him escape. Which, speaking of Jensen, I don't think people really acknowledge just how legendary and goated Jensen is. The man literally saved Tony from dying. He stopped the shrapnel from going into his heart. You want to talk about Tony not being who he was if he wasn't a billionaire? No, Tony wouldn't be who he was if it wasn't for Jensen. Stop playing with the GOAT. Not to mention the fact that he was literally helping Tony as he was making the Mark I suit, and he distracted the terrorist in enough time so that the Mark I could finish loading up. Yeah, Jensen saved the MCU, literally. What makes Jensen so goated and legendary with very little screen time is just how impactful he clearly is on Tony's life. While yes, Tony may be the super genius and everything, he may know the mechanical stuff, the technical stuff and all that, but Jensen balances all of that out with his knowledge and his wisdom. them. Every conversation that they have is deep and has meaning to it, and every word that Jensen tells Tony is important and critical to what forges Tony and how his arc progresses throughout the movie. That's ultimately the reason why their final conversation and Jensen's death is so important and very heartbreaking at the same time. Because one, obviously you see Tony succeed in escaping, but unfortunately Jensen dies. But once Jensen revealed to Tony that this was the plan all along, Jensen has no family left. His family is dead, and his plan was to go and see them once he himself passes away, which is what makes this line said by Tony have so much importance and have so much meaning behind it.
Thank you for saving me.
Don't waste your life.
It is at this point in time that we see Tony's character be completely reborn. He's no longer the same guy that he was before he was captured. He has different goals and different motives, and his views on his own life as well as the lives around him completely change. I don't know, I just feel like I needed to mention all of that because, again, I truly don't think people appreciate Jensen and how important he is to Tony's character and just honestly the rest of the MCU. Honestly, I don't think it's ridiculous to say, but Jensen might just be top 3 greatest Marvel characters of all time. Am I reaching? Probably, maybe a little, but I don't care. But anyways, moving on from that, after Tony escapes and he's back into his real life world, he, like I said, immediately changes. He shuts down his weapons program after realizing just how much damage it has caused to the same people that he swore to protect, which is where our main antagonist now comes into play, who is the Big Lebowski, played by Jeff Bridges. Now, the Big Lebowski essentially wants to become the CEO of Stark Industries. He wants Tony's clout. He wants Tony's aura. So he sent the 10 rings to kill Tony. And obviously that failed miserably. You know, the Big Lebowski, he's against Tony shutting down the weapons program. He thinks that this will burn Stark Industries to the ground and it's going to ruin his father's image and, you know, the typical bad guy stuff. Now, obviously, the Ironmonger isn't the most memorable MCU villain. He's not up there with, like, some of these GOAT tier level villains. But at the end of the day, for what he does in this movie, he does a good job. He's threatening, he's menacing, he has an intimidating voice. That scene where he's taking out Tony's reactor out of his chest is very good. Jeff Bridges gives an amazing performance. So all in all, as he may not be memorable as a villain, but like I said, he made his impact on this movie. And of course, he was the one that's responsible for this iconic line in the MCU, which will be cemented in MCU history forever.
Possible.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
Craziest thing is that he wasn't even glazing Tony in this scene right there. Like, that's pure facts. Going back to more Tony, however, one of my personal favorites scenes of Tony / Iron Man, just moments in general in the MCU, is the moment where the side piece pulls up to him at the party and tells him how his weapons are being used to attack the village. But the moment that Tony realizes that his weapons are being used to attack Jensen's home village, what does he do? He immediately goes home. He aura farms for a little bit. He puts on the new fit and he says, Jarvis, peep the fit. And he goes and he slimes the 10 rings. Definition of a true homie. He found out that the dead homie's village was being attacked and he immediately went and slid up for the dead homie. And of course, it wouldn't be an Iron Man scene if it wasn't for the insane amount of aura that is being transpired through the screen. His landing, aura. The moment he grabs that terrorist through the wall and tells the villagers,
He's all yours.
Had that man wishing he had wore the brown pants that day. Overall, Iron Man just works on so many good levels, from the plot to the story, which is, I guess, technically the same thing, to the characters, to the visual effects, to the action sequences. Of course, you have Tony just absolutely carrying every scene that he's in. You have, again, a okay villain at best. If that's really my only negative, is that, you know, the villain is just essentially a stronger version of our protagonist. But I mean, that's not the first time we've seen it in the MCU, and, you know, obviously wasn't the last. But like I said, just compared to the plethora of amazing villains we've gotten in the MCU, you know, Ironmonger just kind of, it gets lost in all of the other greatness that we've gotten throughout the MCU years. And overall, I think that this is a perfect way to kick off one of the most massive and impactful cinematic universes in the history of cinema. And I think with that being said, I think this movie earned itself a rightful 9 out of 10 score. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I say
Next time, baby.
well, there you have it, folks. Part 1 of The Road to Doomsday has officially concluded. If you enjoyed it, let me know what you thought of the review, and let me know what your thoughts on Iron Man are in the comments down below. If you do enjoy this video and you want to see the remainder of the series, do consider clicking that subscribe button and hit that like button along with that notification bell to never miss one of these videos. Part 2 will be the review of The Incredible Hulk, so be on the lookout for that video. And with that being said, I have nothing else to say, so I'll see y'all on the next one, guys.